Good evening and welcome to the second and final day, the second and final night of the 2023 Spa and Surf Showdown, a two-day contest consisting of all the races both days from Saratoga and Del Mar. We've got 4 races left, the final 4 from Del Mar, and we'll take you right on through to the end. My name is Eric Wing. I'm the Communications Director at HorseTourneys. And with me to provide the expert analysis is NHC Hall of Famer and host of the Bet with the Best podcast, Chris Larmey. Chris, how are you tonight?
Doing great. Really looking forward to these next 4 races to see what unfolds and see who walks away with the big money.
And that big money, to be precise, is $210,623. That's the winner's share of an overall prize pool that amounts to $588,806. And for much of day 2, as you may recall if you were following along last night, Paul Cush moved himself up to first place at the end of day 1 thanks to a DQ late in the final race at Del Mar. Cush has had less success today. A man who has had success. The leaderboard was very tight throughout much of the afternoon, and it seemed like if a decent price horse came in, it was somebody down in the standings to have it and compress the standings further. But in about the last hour, Anthony Spinazzola, a 60-year-old from Mesa, Arizona, he has taken command, and he's now up by $38 exactly. And he took 2 races back in the 6th at Del Mar. He had Baristan the Bold at 7-1. And Chris, gosh, there was a great opportunity, or at least, easy for me to say, looking down from on high, a 13-1 shot just romped. And the highest ranked contender to have it was Jim Kazupi in 26th place. Now that did move Jim up to 10th, but Spinazzola did have the place horse Hondo Crouch, and that added a not insignificant $9.20 to his total to extend his lead to $38. And now, hey, 38 is a nice lead, but we have 4 races left, and a couple of them are some humdingers. So how do you view the overall leaderboard as of this point, Chris?
Well, yeah, I think Anthony has to be pretty happy. He's not feeling safe by any stretch. I mean, there's a lot of racing to go, but that's a pretty commanding lead, and it might get a few of the players start thinking about finishing second rather than going for the lead, which always would help Anthony a little bit. So, we'll see how it unfolds as we go forward. He certainly hasn't locked it up, but he's got a commanding lead, and he's the one to beat, but he has a target on his back, and there's 4 races to go.
I want to drill down a little further in the standings, Chris, but before I forget, let's take a look. We also pay out day money to the top 4 in the standings, and so it's Caleb Knight who's done the best on day 2. He's got 167.60 if my eyes aren't deceiving me, or 167.40. I always have trouble with that bottom line at the optometrist. Craig Kaufman and Keith Simon and the People's CFO Joe J.K. Curry is 4th at 141.20. Now the top 4 get day money ranging from, I think it was 14 grand down to 14.50 for 4th. So we'll monitor that as the evening progresses. But and there you see Spinazzola now. He's not in the day money yet, but as you can see, he's had the 6th best day among anybody, and that's shot him right to the top of the standings. So as we go back to the leaderboard, Spinazzola now leads, and Max Schnepp is in 2nd. People may remember him. He had been the day 1 leader until the final race DQ of the place horse yesterday at Del Mar. And then some familiar names: Vic Stauffer, former NHC champion Ray Arsenault had been up high. Joe Migliore still punching away. Brendan Fay, a whole bunch of them. There's Caleb Knight down in 15th, the current best performer on Sunday. But a kind of an interesting scenario, Chris, and we direct the viewers' attention to the 3rd and 7th place people in the standings, and it's the same person, Frank Gaboski Jr. Now, give us an overview, Chris, of how Gaboski worked his way into 3rd and 7th.
Well, he had 2 entries, obviously, and up until the prior 2 races, the one we just had and the one before that, he had played the exact same picks on both entries, and he had a good day and a half, and they were both up in like the top 10. But at some point, and so he's, has a pretty powerful spot. He can be playing 2 horses now in these last 4 races, doubles his chances in each race of catching a winner and potentially a good price. So that gives him a lot of leverage. And I a lot of times people ask me, if you have 2 entries in a contest like this, especially one that spans 2 days and 40 plus races, or you're at the NHC, which is 3 days and even more, how do you play multiple entries to give you an advantage? And I don't think there's a lot of advantage to playing 2 entries, other than you've got, it doesn't really give you any advantage over 2 players each playing a single entry, except if you take this strategy and you play the same picks on both entries until the very end of the contest, and you have a good 2 days or 3 days at the NHC, then you're at the position where now if you split the tickets and start playing different horses, you've got a lot of leverage. You've got a lot of extra ammunition that the others in contention don't have. So I really think what he did was the smart way to play 2 entries in a contest like this. I think any other method doesn't buy you a whole lot. You end up just splitting horses across 2 entries, and in this kind of format, that really doesn't help you much. But if you do what he did and you have a couple good days, you can be in the position he's in now, where I'd rather be in the lead by 39 like Anthony, but if I'm not in the lead, I like, Frank's chances of catching something in these next few races, with two shots with both entries in contention.
And Chris, before we turn our attention to the first of the 4 races, the final 4, if you will, that we'll be zeroing in on tonight, we should point out also, going into this 2023 Spa and Surf Showdown, there were 2 players who were eligible for $1 million bonuses. David Wolf, who won the FloCal Face-Off in January, and Lucas Van Zandt, who captured the Players' Championship in May. If either one of them won with their entry, their designated entry number 1, they get $1 million bonus. If you're on the HorseTourney site and you have access to, players 50 at a time, you'll see both of their names on that first page. Van Zandt is in 24th place. Wolf is in 44th place. With 4 races left, not at all impossible. Easy? Definitely not. Now, with $299, Van Zandt is $95 away. So that's more than a cap horse. That's almost a cap and a half. And Wolf is farther behind at, now I can't read my own writing, but he's at about 187, I think. Anyway, he's going to really need something of a miracle to get up for the $1 million, but we'll keep an eye on that. And if they close any more ground, Chris and I will be sure to let you know as the races unfold here, because if we think Spinazzola is under a lot of pressure, imagine what it's like if you're playing for a potential $1 million bonus. Well, Chris, I see they're out on the track for race 7. This is a 5-furlong turf event for California bred and sired horses, going 5 furlongs on the turf. I think I already said that, but it's an allowance race. Non-winners of 1 other than. And what were your initial thoughts coming into this race? It looks like we got a couple coming out of hook races at Los Al, nighttime version, as well as some horses with decent 6 or 7 furlong turf form, but not really at the shorter distances quite as much.
Yeah, just one thing I'd say is don't discount those 1,000-yard horses from Los Al. That's not much shorter than 5 furlongs. So on these 5 furlong dashes, and they're running against quarter horses. That means they have some pretty good gate speed if they can run with those horses. So, don't for instance, the 4-horse, Sketch Me Jammin', very, very live long shot in this contest coming out of that Los Al race, or it's running a Los Al race before, I guess. Yeah, it's coming out of one. And it has sort of quarter horse speed. It could clear in here and might not look back. So don't prejudge those horses too much. I've seen them win at the Del Mar 5 furlong distance.
Well, that's good info for an East Coast guy like me, who admittedly does not watch a whole lot of the quarters at night, although I do enjoy it when there's nothing else on TV. But well, how do you? I mean, are you bullish or providing the glass half full purely because of the speed? Because his turf race was dreadful, though he is out of a Scat Daddy mare, so that gives her some license. I mean, you almost have to have speed coming from Los Al, but I guess Sketch Me Jammin' is faster on paper than Square Tomatoes, so that's why you like Sketch Me Jammin', just because of respect for the speed?
Well, I mean, I just tossed that turf race. It didn't get off to a good start, and that was early in its career. And it clearly it ran against the Square Tomatoes and completely blew its doors out of the gate. This horse is very quick out of the gate. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that horse, but I'm just saying that horse has got a legitimate chance at 20+ to 1. So if I had a chance at $1 million and I were David Wolf or who's our other Van Zant?
Yes.
That's
Lucas.
the horse I'd be on, because all of a sudden I'd have a shot at $1 million if that one could come in. So, I don't want to overemphasize, overdo it, but I just wanted to point out that don't discount those horses necessarily coming out of those 1,000-yard races at Los Al. In this particular race, going 5 furlongs on the turf, because that horse could clear and he could be gone. But there's a lot of other horses to like. I mean, to me, the 2-horse, Don't You Forget, the favorite, to me, it kind of is clearly the one to beat. And, I wouldn't be shocked to see some people pick that one. Right now, if you're the leader with a 39-point lead, you probably aren't worried about those 2-to-1 shots. So I would be surprised to see him pick those. But some of those others farther down the leaderboard are just looking to move up, might be trying to land on that horse. The other obvious one's the 5-horse, but you're getting a little better price there. So I kind of expect to see quite a few players landing on the 5, Big Little Sis. She's got, definitely fits in here. Will be coming from a little bit off the pace. And then, the outside 2 horses are 2 more that kind of make sense in here. The 10 horses coming off a layoff and maybe wants a little longer, but again, you're getting 5 or 6 to 1 there. Gritty Girl kind of fits as well. So those 3, a Big Little Sis, Gritty Girl, and Flaming Magoon, the 5, 9, and 10 kind of are in that range where I think you'll see a lot of the contest players landing on that horse. The other price play other than the 4, I think, makes sense is the 1, Queen of Pompeii. That horse, another one coming off a layoff, and this could be more of a prep, maybe wants longer, but it's one that should be finishing up strong and is a big price. So there's a lot of ways to go. I think most of the others are kind of really stretching, but there are some options, in terms, the favorite's not completely unplayable because it's, 2 to 1, 5 to 2. You got 3 mid-price horses in the 5, 9, and 10, and then you've got 2 kind of logical long shots in the 1 and the 4. So good options for the players depending on where they are on the leaderboard.
Yeah, Chris, I'm with you on the 9 and the 10, and I'll almost just as an oddity, I'm going to point out on Flame Magoon, I kind of put a little emphasis in my voice, California bred or sired. Flame Magoon is a Kentucky bred, but he's by California sire Stanford. So Magoon is for all intents and purposes is a Calbred, even though he isn't. And the only other horse I'm going to throw in that I don't think you mentioned, and this horse is 12-1 right now, and this was kind of one of my top 3 in here, was Long May She Reign, number 7. Speed shortening up the half furlong cut back to 1 furlong cut back to 5 furlongs, I think will be a plus. And she's back with state breds. Last time was with Open. She duked it out and predictably, I suppose, faded. Now she's back in with her locals and her homies, I guess you would say. And I think now she just ticked down to 11-1. So for me, it's 7, 9, or 10, with 7 being the best value. But the horses are starting to load. And one last thought, Chris, on where you think the players will wind up in here.
Well, like I think, that most of them will be on the 5, 9, or 10. I just wanted to point out, the reason I didn't like the 7 as much or the other speed horses, I really think the 4 is going to be gunning out of the lead, and I don't think any of them can run with that one early. So to me, the speed horses are at a little bit of a disadvantage with the 4 in there. But I think your Losal
speedball.
Yeah, but I think 5, 9, and 10 are probably where you're going to see a lot of the ones near the top. But, if they're aggressive, I can see them going for the 1 or the 4 as well. And maybe your 7. I mean, the 7 makes sense. I just think from a pace perspective, it's up against it with the 4 in the race. That's all.
Well, we shall soon see, and it won't take long to see. We'll want to see who everybody has and, of course, the result of the race. Scratch Me Jammin', we're expecting to go to the lead, and they're off. And, well, Scratch Me Jammin', it is vying for the lead at least.
Yeah, he'll be there.
And there she is, yep.
So let's refresh the leaderboard and see where the players landed. Yeah, there's a lot of 5s and 9s and 10s on there, but the 7 went, Anthony went with your 7 horse.
Clearly a webcast viewer.
Yes. Right now the 6 got the lead, had to fight for it. Now we've got a whole brigade coming after him. We'll see if the 6 can hold on. Looking pretty good right now. We don't have anybody on the 6 horse in the top of the leaderboard. And this horse we've got the 2 making a late run, the favorite, but he's not going to get the 6. So that's a very uneventful for us in terms of the contest. I'm trying to find anybody. Got to go down to the 47th place player that landed on that 6 horse.
It's uneventful for us who are perhaps looking to insert drama into the proceedings. However, it's quite eventful, I would say, if you're Anthony Spinazzola, when you need you need a search warrant to go down and find anybody who had either of these 2 horses, so that you're not harmed at all. And meanwhile, you can cross one race off your
That's
calendar,
right.
so to speak,
exactly,
and say, I'm 1 race closer to escaping from Shawshank.
Yeah, and this was a dangerous race. So
this was one with a potential for big prices. They did not materialize, but I think we're going to see it. I don't think we're going to see that same potential in race number 9. Do you?
I mean, it's 2-year-old races, so anything could happen. But yeah, I would say the potential for a 6 or 8-1 winner is pretty low. There'll be a couple of these that will probably drift way up, but they're kind of outside chances. So you never know, but I would certainly think less likely to see a big price winner in the next race than we were in this one. And then this one ended up being, chalk finish. So for Anthony, it was a gift, like you said. Everybody else, they've got one less bullet in the holster to try to, catch him with.
Yeah, for Anthony, this was the next best thing to him having the 7 run first or second.
Right.
Just to kind of it's like a scoreless inning in baseball when you're ahead, and now getting Mariano up in the bullpen to try to close it out, but you're that much closer.
If he had a Mariano, he'd be feeling pretty good.
If you got one of those bullpens by committee, maybe not quite as safe. And there, the pari-mutuel returns $620 to win and $380 to place for your race winner organic. And number 2, don't you forget, $340 to place. And who cares about show? This is the Spa Surf Showdown after all. This is HorseTourneys. Actually, shows do matter sometimes if you wind up in a tie and you're tied on the first couple of tiebreakers. But that's a commentary for another day. Let's see, are these standings refreshed? Frankly, it's a little hard to tell given the fact that nobody had 6 or 2.
Yeah, I think they're up to date, but there really was no change in the top 40. So not much to talk about in terms of movement other than, as you said, Anthony is one race closer to holding on for the big paycheck.
Chris, I just want to ask you, now, you and I are sitting here, and understandably so, because we don't want to bore our audience to death. We're kind of going race by race and putting our all into each race. But if you're playing a contest, certainly by now, but in all likelihood, probably much earlier than now, you kind of know how the whole day lays out, right? Not only do you know where your preferred plays are, your favorite horses of the day, but like, for example, race 9 at Del Mar, it's a 2-year-old filly stake, a couple of real fast debuters, field of 8. Then the La Jolla, nice race, field of 8. And then, race 11, your obligatory $20,000 maiden claimer. And maybe these aren't the classiest horses on the West Coast, but it makes certainly for a very fun last race of the contest. How cognizant are you as a player? Obviously, now this is 10 times as true in a live money contest, but that last race is key. But it's also important in a mythical contest. How cognizant are you, whether it's, saving bullets, if that's the format, or making sure I have like a plan A, B, and C in the last race if it's a live bankroll? How conscious are you of the landscape of how the races unfold during the course of a contest?
Well, I think now when you're down to the last few races, you're definitely thinking ahead. So you definitely have spent time in that last race. Most players will have a plan A, B, or C depending on what they need to, what they're going for and what they need. But even the, next few races, they're saying, well, what am I shooting for? Where am I at in the leaderboard? Can I win it? Some of these right now might be ready to kind of say, you know what, I'm probably not going to catch Anthony. I might be thinking about catching Max and getting second place. 80 something isn't bad, So they'll be looking at where they're trying to get and what's the best way to get there. And they may think, wow, this next race looks really chalky. Maybe I just go with the chalk. But the last 2 races, I have price horses I can go with. And if I can hit one of those 2, I can, vault myself up into second place or third place. So they're thinking ahead like that. I think most of the players are. Some may not. Some might just be, making decisions on the fly. But that's the way they have to think about what is it, where are they on the leaderboard, what's a realistic goal at this point in the contest, and what are the best 3 decisions I can make to get to that goal. And then you've got to reassess depending on the result after each race. But that's kind of how you have to approach it. So right now, I'm thinking 3 races, the last 3 races, what am I going to do? I'm kind of like the coach says, after Jim makes this free throw, we're going to do this, right? Well, I'm thinking I'm going to hit this next race, and then I'm going to hit this horse, I'm hit that horse. And now if I don't make the next race, I got to reassess. But I'm going to kind of make a plan, and if a plan, I'm trying to execute it, and as long as it still makes sense to stay on that plan, I'll do it, or I'll readjust if I need to, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense, Chris. Now, I have to admit, sometimes I have trouble backing off. And by that, I mean, like, if I'm playing, my sights are only on the first place score. But with as much money as is on the line in this contest, isn't it fair to say that perhaps the amount of money for a second, third, or fourth calls for maybe a slightly more conservative strategy than merely just going for broke?
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on what your objectives are. I mean, maybe you just want to win, so you go for it. But, if I'm down in 15th place and the only way I can win is to try to hit a cap horse, well, if I do hit a cap horse, there's probably going to be other people ahead of me that hit it as well. So I probably can't even win with a cap horse. I'll have to add a cap horse and a couple more. So I might be thinking, well, let those guys shoot for the cap horse, and I have a good 8-to-1 shot, and that can move me up, from 15th place into 3rd or 4th. And then if I can hit something else, I might be able to finish 2nd and take $80,000. So it kind of depends on, their objective. It is, that $200,000 is enticing. And certainly if you can win the $1 million bonus, that changes things too. But, you got to kind of be realistic. And given that Anthony sort of stretched it out a bit, once you get outside that top 10 or so, I seriously start thinking about shooting for something other than the win. I'm not saying they will or should, but they might.
And, before we go to break, Chris, we've been fixated on the overall leaderboard, not without reason, but let's take a look at the day 2 day money, which has refreshed and is now on screen. Caleb Knight continues to lead the way, but he's only on top by $120 over Craig Kaufman. Keith Simon third with 153.10, and Joe J.K. Curry at 141.30. And just for those who are wondering, first prize of the day 2 only leaderboard is 14,602. Second place worth 87.61. The third player gets 43.80, and fourth is 14.60. So there's some good money to be won, especially those top 3 spots. And I suppose if you're Caleb Knight or Craig Kaufman or even Keith Simon for that matter, you got one eye on one leaderboard and the other eye on the other, no?
Yeah, and notice that these guys were all on that, we talked about 5, 9, and 10 being the sort of 3 logical mid-price horses. Almost every guy in that top 10 picked one of those 3 horses. So they weren't shooting for the moon. They were trying to, move up either on this leaderboard or the next. So you're right. If you're one of those guys like Joe Corey, who's in the middle there, and he can hit a mid-price horse, it can not only move him up on the main leaderboard, it can move him up on this leaderboard. And the combination of those two could be a pretty good payday, right?
Now, if you're trying to handicap what Knight, Kaufman, and Simon are going to do in the next race, let's say I'm Joe Curry, and I'm trying to say, oh, these 3 all went for the same kind of horse, although Curry sort of did too with Flame Magoon. But would your educated guess be that they're going to stick with mid-price, 5, 6, 8-to-1 type horses rather than bombs based on just what you see on the screen?
It depends on the race, because that race offered some pretty logical mid-price horses. This race, there's a heavy favorite, right? That pushiness kind of looked like a rocket ship in its first race, the 3-horse. You know, it's 1-9 right now. It won't go off at 1-9. Probably be like 2-5, 1-2. But it's a big favorite. So you're not going to make much. You're not going to gain much ground playing that one. So, you know, and after him, it's kind of wide open. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them, you know, taking a shot at a bigger price in here. You know, you have sort of the option of going with the favorite, which very few people will do, going with the kind of obvious second choice, the 2-horse. There might be some in there because that horse is a decent price. It'll be, you know, 3 or 4 to 1. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some of those guys go on that one. But then, you know, after that, it's pretty wide open, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some people take a shot. You know, certainly with a horse like the 1, who looked really good in its debut and hasn't been out in a while. You know, its numbers don't quite stack up with the others, but it ran its race way back in April. And there's a big difference between a 2-year-old in April and a 2-year-old in August. So that 1 horse is sort of the wild card. It may be really talented as well, and it's not going to take the money that those top 2 will. So I'm kind of thinking you're going to see them either on the 2, the 1, and then possibly the other kind of logical play would be the 7-horse Crazy Hot. I don't like that one as much, but I could see people making a case for that one as well. So, you know, to me, that's where you'll be. Either they'll go for the 4 to 1, kind of the conservative play, or they'll take a shot at a bigger price with the 1 or the 7. That's kind of what I'd expect from almost every player near the top of the leaderboard. Others may take a shot at, you know, the real reach with a horse like the 6 or the 8, or probably if you're going to make a reach, I'd make a reach with the 4, because the 4 is kind of the closer that might clunk up. But I think the rest are all pretty much a stretch.
Well, we'll take a deeper look at this upcoming race 9 from Del Mar, the CTBA Stakes, in just a few minutes. We're going to take a brief break. We'll have a countdown clock up, so you'll know exactly when we're coming back. And when we do, Chris and I will look at race 9 at Del Mar, the CTBA Stakes, the 3rd from last race in this year's 2023 Spa Surf Showdown. See you in a few minutes. And Eric Wing and Chris Larmey are back with you as we're 7 minutes to post for this upcoming race 9 at Del Mar. 3 races to go in the Spa and Surf Showdown, $210,000 to the winner. And the leader as of now, Anthony Spinazzola, by 38 bucks. And he and the other contestants are looking at a field of 7 that is quite obviously led by number 3, Pushiness at 1 to 5. This is a Calbred stake, and Pushiness is owned by that renowned owner of Calbreds, Mike Rapoli. And, I can't figure, Chris, why is Umberto Rispoli riding this today instead of Juan Hernandez? The only thing I can think of is Rapoli wanted a jockey whose name was more like his own.
I have no words for that, Eric. I don't have a response for that. I don't know. Good question.
I mean, it's just weird on the face of it. Obviously, Hernandez did nothing wrong, unless it could be one of those things you just can't know. Like Rispoli had always been working him and her, and for some reason couldn't ride that day, and Hernandez was riding as a one-shot deal. But when you're looking to beat a 1 to 5 shot, sometimes you'll really grasp at straws to try to poke a hole. And it was just one weird thing I noticed. Horse wins debut by 6, different jockey for race number 2. Now, why don't you review quickly, Chris, before we went to break? And I think it's a given. It doesn't require much explanation to explain why players will largely be ignoring the 3-horse unless it's almost too early to play for $4, isn't it? I mean, do you see any scenario in which people are playing Pushiness number 3?
I won't say they won't. I mean, you might have someone like Frank Okazaki in 4th and Frank Grabowski in 3rd. If Frank Okazaki picks the 3, he could pass Frank in for 3rd place. There's still 2 races to go, so like you said, it's kind of early to do that. But I could see maybe that, but I'll be surprised. I think most people are just going to go. I think there'll be a lot of people on the 2 that are looking to make a smaller move rather than the 3. I think Anthony, our leader, has got a big enough lead where he can just not worry about the 2 or the 3. He's willing to give up that and make sure he doesn't get nailed by somebody like the 1 or the 4 or the 7. So I would expect to see him on one of those 3. And that's where I'd expect to see most of the players land, on either the 1, the 4, or the 7. The 1 and the 7 is maybe the least aggressive of the 3. The 1, I think, is the most interesting, probably the smart play. And in the post parade, I really like the 1. It's really a leggy filly that looks like she's going to get better and mature with each race. And she hasn't run since April. I could see a lot of improvement. She doesn't have to be in the lead, so she won't have to blast off. And the horses that want to be up front are probably going to get their goose cooked by the favorite. So I think you'll see a lot on the 1, and maybe even the 4 as kind of another closer that might pick up the pieces late. So because of the small field, there's not as many options. So I think that's where you're going to see them land on the 2 for those that are looking to make kind of a smaller move, and then the 7, 1, or 4 for those that want to make a little bit more aggressive jump. And for me, I would be on the 1 pretty much anywhere on the leaderboard right now. That's who I'd go with.
Now, I know you've stated your reasons for liking the 1, including the physical that you saw on track. I'm just gonna, and this isn't really an insightful or rocket science, what I'm going to say regarding number 7, Crazy Hot, who I know you already said, Chris, you're not super keen on, but if you take your finger and cover up the last race, the June 17th race, the debut looks pretty much every bit as good as Pushiness is, the 1-9 favorite, or one, whatever he is now. I can't see, 1-2. You know, big, impressive daylight victory. He won by 10, let alone the mere 6 1/4 that Pushiness won by. Comes back at 3-5 in the next race, which is a stake, and the wheels fall off, and finishes 3rd out of 4 after, you know, step slow, yada yada yada. And that was the alternative for me, and it's not exactly you know, graduate school level handicapping, but just when you don't want the 1-5 shot, and you need somebody else, and you don't fancy yourself a student of Bonnie Ledbetterology like Chris, then you know you have to fall back on the dope in the paper.
Yeah, and that's a stablemate of the one I like, and you make a good case. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that logic. I wouldn't disagree with anything you said. The reason I don't like that horse is I don't like fillies that regress off their debut, because a lot of times they don't ever come back to that number, and often it takes a layoff before they do. And I think she's not quick enough to go with the 3, so she's either going to chase or they're going to really push her hard. And since her stablemates in the race and will kind of enjoy more leisurely trip a little farther back, you know, I just don't see that 7 getting the trip she needs. And if anything, they might be, you know, willing to put her on the lead. Not, again, kind of like we talked about yesterday in one race, not because she's a rabbit, but just because she's a speed horse and they need to have her up front. So they're going to see if she's, you know, good enough to run with that favorite. We'll find out. But she did draw that outside post, so they have some options. And if they can get her relaxed early, she might just pull the surprise, just like you said. So I wouldn't talk you out of that, and I think a lot of players will land on that 7.
Yeah, I do too. Well, it was 6-1, and now it's 8-1. So kind of took a hit, and now it's drifting back up. Horses loading. The second choice, Grand Slam Smile, the only horse to have won twice and to have beaten winners also. So while there's some fancy-looking maiden winners, that's your horse that's won twice, the 3-1 second choice. The favorite, though, is that horse, number 3, Pushiness, from the Rapoli stable, a rare Calbred, and they're all in. And let's take a look at race 9 from Del Mar, and they're off, and Pushiness is going to take the lead.
Yeah, not surprising there. The rest are chasing, and it doesn't look like anybody's anxious to go with the 3. So,
and Frank Grabowski was anxious to go with the 3. He used him on both of his entries.
Yeah, that is interesting. I said that possibly those guys might be looking to inch up. Your 7 horse is making the first challenge here. We'll see. Maybe she's had
to follow with those silks.
Yeah. So we'll see if she can push that 3. They didn't go real fast early, so it's going to be hard for anybody to catch either one of these. It's been kind of a merry-go-round race.
And 7's run is flattened out, and here comes the second choice, Grand Slam Smile.
Yeah. So, the riders all kind of handed that one to the 3. No one wanted to go with it. And, it's a stakes race, and they got some placings out of it, but not a real true test of any of the horses in there. That was kind of a little disappointing from a competitive standpoint. But, the 3 was probably the best, and 2 was probably second best. 1 galloping out really good.
Put him in your stable, Mal.
Yeah, had no chance. No chance. But there it is, galloping out in front. So, yeah, that horse. I look at the size differential between the 1 and the 3. I mean, that horse is much longer and looks like a distance horse. So seriously, that one, when they stretch out, watch for the Fly a Fantasy horse. She'll improve.
Yeah,
doesn't do any good today.
The 3 is Pushiness is sort of the opposite of Scopy. He's not really quarter horsey, but And now I warned you, I'm getting over my head on, Maggie Wolfendale stuff, but she's, she's just small and powerfully built without being Karl Malone just yet.
Yeah, she looks like a precocious sprinter.
Yep.
And she's fast, and she'll probably win some more races, but she's probably not going to win the Breeders' Cup Distaff or flying. Probably none of these will, but Fly a Fantasy is probably more likely to be, winning Calbred route races next year than Pushiness, but probably never will be Pushiness at 5.5 furlongs.
No, you're going to have to. But that is interesting for down the road, and may not have suited Fly a Fantasy today, but something to look for. It was almost like a 3-horse race. I mean, Pushiness went to the lead. Crazy Hot took a shot at her, got repelled, and Grand Slam Smile just split them late. Pretty comfortable margins between each finishing position.
But it did make a few. There was some movement on the leaderboard. I mean, Frank was hoping to move into second, I think, with his pick of Pushiness, but Max had Grand Slam Smile to place, so I think he's going to hold his position. They'll both creep up a little bit on Anthony, which doesn't hurt. But again, Anthony's probably pretty happy with that result. He didn't lose a lot of ground. He played it smart. He picked a long shot. And actually, Frank Okazaki in fourth played that long shot that Anthony had. So, he had blocked him. And so the leaderboard, a lot of these guys crept up a little bit. I'm thinking they were looking to make moves to move up the leaderboard. It's pretty compact from second through 10th. So a lot of those guys playing the 2 or 3 made a little bit of a move. I'm a little surprised as how many of them played the 3, but it worked out pretty well for them.
And yes, the 3 and the 2 I mean, you're right. More surprising to see that many on the 3 than on the 2. But the top players were all around the top 2 in this race, and it looks like the board has been, even though the prices aren't up on the screen yet at Del Mar, and now they are $320 and $260 for Pushiness and $320 to place for Grand Slam Smile. So that place payoff on Grand Slam Smile sort of counteracts the win price on Pushiness. But under the kind of the Chris Larmey theory of thinking 3 races out, and here's what I'm going to do, and the contest doesn't end with the CTBA stakes and Pushiness. You see somebody like Grabowski or Vic Stauffer or Brendan Fay saying, I'm going to try to take what seems obvious and edge my way forward and leave myself just a little bit less work to do over the final 2 races and go from there. It looks like now Grabowski got himself, even though Schnepp had the place horse, Grabowski's now just 60 cents out of second, though I think you're right. I think he was hoping to.
Yeah, I think you're giving them a little more credit than they deserve. I don't think they were trying to inch closer to the lead. I think they're thinking about second, third, fourth, fifth, and they're trying to inch above the players that are in front of them. And they all kind of did that. They all did that, and it really didn't make a lot of difference because almost everybody it made a few bucks, but I think that's what they were thinking.
Yeah, so
more for second than for first.
It would have done more if they weren't all on the same horses, basically. You're saying, yeah.
But Frank is, he's got 2 in contention. He's kind of wasted it. I thought he should have at least went for a price on one of those 2. I mean, it worked out okay, but I think he's got to start swinging at least with one of his entries at this point, or he's losing the value of having the 2 entries. So I'll be really surprised if at least one of his entry in 7th, he's not on some big prices in these last 2 races. If he's not, I think he's kind of wasting the leverage he has, but we'll see. So we want to look at the day money leaderboard and see what happened
Yeah,
there.
let's take a look at that. And now, looks like $1.20. Seemed like it was pretty close going into that race, but well, I guess it was $1.20 before anyway, because they both had Grand Slam Smile. And Simon and Curry gain no ground but lose no ground. And Michael Baychuk, the $1 Million Man, he got himself within 50 cents of Curry by virtue of having the 320 place payoff on Grand Slam Smile. So that is wide open. I mean, the top two spots are very tight. And then looks like there's about $8 separating 4th through 9th. And Grabowski's got 2 shots of that one too, although I'm sure he's got his mind more on the bigger game than on the day money. But I don't know. Do you see anything? This is kind of from the bigger picture, Chris. This race was almost another. This race was sort of a non-event, both on the overall and the day 2 leaderboards, wouldn't you say?
Well, I'd say it was another big win for Anthony, right?
Yeah, except for that, of course.
I mean, every race you get chalky results is a huge win for him, because now he's gotten through a couple since we've come on that have been chalky, and he's only got 2 races to go, and now his lead, $35, 2 races to go, it's looking bigger and bigger. I would be worried about Frank, because he's, like I said, I think he's got to take a shot in here, but we'll see. I was a little surprised. He was really surprised that he picked a 3 on both his entries there. So we'll see what happens.
All right. So if you're listening, Frank, know that Chris Larmey, NHC Hall of Famer, is going to be sorely disappointed if you go chalk with your 2 picks on in the La Jolla handicap.
Yes, I will.
Anyway, just kidding, Frank. You keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's working. It's working.
But, we're going to take a longer and closer look at the La Jolla handicap in a few minutes. But at this point, we'll stop and take another intermission. It's 19 minutes to post, and we'll be back. We'll have, again, the count-up clock that our director, Ryan Bauer, will put up. And when that elapses, Chris and I will be back to take a look at the final 2 races of the 2023 Spa Surf Showdown. Eric Wing and Chris Larmey back with you here during the Horse Tourneys webcast of the 2023 Spa Surf Showdown. Anthony Spinazzola of Mesa, Arizona, holding on to a lead of $30, $34.80 to be precise. Spinazzola has benefited in the last two races from chalky results, and he's benefited not because he's necessarily had cashed anything, but because the chalkiness has prevented anybody from gaining ground on him. And now, instead of 4 races left like there was when we began the webcast, there are now just 2 races left for him to survive and negotiate in order to pull in the $210,000 first place prize. They're on the track for race 10 at Del Mar, the $150,000 La Jolla handicap for 3-year-olds going 1 1/16 on turf. And Chris, I suppose the good news for Anthony again here is, while this is a more competitive race, the longest price on the board among 8 is the 6-horse Kid Azteca, who's only 12-1. So it's not like, at least there's not going to be a cap horse, it doesn't appear, to swoop him from way back in the standings.
That's right. That is important. I mean, there's not a whole bunch of long shots that can beat him. The downside is there's a whole bunch of horses, in the 4 to 10-1 range that have, legitimate contenders. So someone could make a significant dent in his lead in this race. If he doesn't get lucky again and it chalks out, it may tighten up on him at the end. I think he's going to go into that last race in first, which is big, but the lead could be a lot less than it is right now.
It's funny, Chris, I think as you look at these 8 horses, I was sort of categorizing them all. For example, the 1 Smart Mo and the 7 Henry Q, who are both about the same price, 7-2 and 4-1 respectively, are both dirt horses making their turf debut. The 5 Panic Alarm and number 8 Zalamo are both sort of slow early European imports. The 2 Agency and the 6 Kid Azteca, both were really no threat in the traditional prep for this race, the Oceanside Stakes, and that kind of left the 2 horses that appeal to me a little bit more in the 3 Maltese Falcon and the 4 Justin's Legacy. But how did you see this La Jolla handicap?
Well, I think you can make a case for a lot of them. In terms of value, to me, the 3 that you said you liked is by far the worst play. That horse finds trouble every time it runs. It's never run a fast race.
Maltese Falcon?
Yeah, Maltese Falcon. He's in a tougher race. The fact that he's favored is just crazy to me. So I'm kind of against that one. That's probably my strongest opinion. Okay. But I think both the horses that are making their turf debuts have turf breeding, and Henry Q, I think, has a real tactical edge. I think he can clear early, and that will make him really dangerous. But Smart Mo is really bred to like the turf, and both have been fast on the dirt. And I mean, Smart Mo was kind of uncharacteristically over-aggressively placed by his trainer in last out. This placing makes a lot more sense. So those 2, I think, are probably the ones to beat. I would lean towards Henry Q because he has a tactical advantage. But, there are no standouts, and there's big question marks given the surface, and the prices aren't that great. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, I was going to say,
that
Chris,
money.
Do you have any problem at all pinning your hopes on 1, let alone 2 different horses making their turf debuts in a graded stakes in which the highest price of the 2 is 4-1?
Yeah, the price.
And I know the pedigree is what it is, but you still never know until they race over it. It just seems chintzy to me, the price on both of those 2. Now they're both 4-1. I don't know. It seems like that's the scenario when I want 8-1, 10-1 in those scenarios, not 4-1.
Yeah, well, I like that price, but none of these turf horses are particularly fast. And if those two dirt horses can translate their form to turf, I think they'll win. That's so. And I bet on these kind of horses all the time, but I wouldn't bet either one of these horses to win at that price. I think they're still more likely to win than the others, but it's not a great price. But in the contest, 4-1 might move you up quite a few spots, especially if you're sitting second through, 15th. 4-1 winner could jump you up 8 or 10 spots on the leaderboard, or if you're max, it could cut the lead in half. So, I would still be leaning that direction, but there's other horses in here, especially like the 8 horse. You talked about the 2 Euros, Panic Alarm and Zalamo, the 5 and the 8. I don't understand the morning line on Panic Alarm. He was 2-1 the morning line, just a bad morning line. But this is not his wheelhouse, bringing Euros, shippers over, turf routers. So, and Zalamo's had a start in the U.S. for a trainer that does this a lot with the Euros, and they switched the blinkers on. He had a terrible start, which a lot of times the Euros have when they first come over, but blinkers on, having that experience, he might get a much better trip this time, and he's a square price. So, of those other ones, Agency, to me, that horse, at 9-1 is crazy price on that horse. He kind of fits in here. So, from a win bet standpoint, he might be the best value, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a lot of people go in that direction. But, for me, you want to stay away from the 3. That's just a terrible price on that horse. I think he's way over bet. And then any of the others, whoever you like, I would just go with them.
Here's why I'm intrigued by the 4, and it's not just because he's trained by Amador Sanchez, who was the ship and win trainer yesterday of Yuki at 29-1, which made a big impact on our Spa and Surf Showdown standings. But you've got a situation here with Justin's legacies. By Justify, he's done just fine as a turf sire so far. But he looks like one of the 2 speeds in the race. And the reason why I'm further intrigued is the other speed, at least on paper, would appear to be Henry Q, who's never run on the turf before. So you just don't know if he's going to – now maybe Henry Q will blast out of there and I'll be wrong with my bet. But in a scenario where I'm getting 10-1 on a horse that is one of the 2 speeds, and if Henry Q doesn't take to the turf, may be loose on the lead, to me that's a good gamble, whether I'm playing in a contest or just pari-mutually. But that's why I'm intrigued by the 4, and I'm hoping to at least get a thrill for 6 furlongs, if not the whole mile in the 16th.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Henry Q has a lot more speed. And I just don't have the concerns you have upon the surface. The breeding says the horse is going to handle it. And even the horses that don't handle the surface usually can show speed. It's just, they get tired because their action's a little different. So I'm not high at all on Justin's legacy. He's probably the one horse I would toss. But the other horse that might show speed if he breaks alertly, it's a big if, is the 5 Panic Alarm. That horse actually has some speed. It's just those Euros are so unreliable in terms of their, getting out of the gate. And Rispoli's not a real aggressive rider, but, that's the other horse. I think if he doesn't get a bad start, he might end up sitting in a pretty good spot. And he was terrible, at the 2-1 morning line, but at 7-1, that horse is not impossible. If you're looking for another horse.
It does seem like Zalamo has run in much better races, at least in Europe, and then offered up the, as you noted, the frequent slow break in the U.S. debut last time. It'll be interesting to see if Panic Alarm can do better out of the gate, but it would seem like Zalamo's been running in better races. Maybe that's why Zalamo's 5-1 compared to 7-1 for Panic Alarm.
Yeah, and he gets blinkers on, so that might help too, help get him a little sharper out of the gate. But this is a race that'll come down to the trips. And I think we're going to be all over the place in terms of the leaders who they're going to be picking. I think because they're getting a decent price on all of them, and there's not an obvious long shot. Although the Kid Azteca is not impossible at 16-1. So maybe I'd love to see Frank go with Kid Azteca on one of his tickets, just to take a shot here and make a big move because that horse not impossible. He's had a less than ideal trips and his numbers fit. So anything could happen in this race. But I do expect. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Kid Azteca, the longest price in the field at 16-1. The favorite is the well-named but trouble-prone, according to Chris, Maltese Falcon at 5-2.
Yeah, he's not a mystery horse. He's going to get into
not
trouble.
A mystery horse.
He's going to get into trouble.
Chris knows what he is.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, they're off. So we'll see.
And they're off.
Yeah.
And that looks like Justin's Legacy going out to the early lead, tracked by, well, he can't get by the 2 Agency. So he'll be stalking Agency with Henry Q outside the 2 of them.
And Frank went with the 2. He went with the bad favorite. I think the bad favorite, Maltese Falcon, the chalk. I don't understand Frank's strategy here late. But Anthony,
do you and Frank have a history, Chris?
No.
Flipping in those digs at every opportunity.
Well, I just thought he played it so smart up until the end. I thought for sure he'd be taking some shots here late because that's what he positioned himself to do. But clearly that wasn't his plan. So I'll lay off that. But Anthony went with Panic Alarm, who didn't get a great break, but he's in contention. And Max went with Henry Q, the 7. So let me see anybody. Nobody's on the 2, which is a little bit surprising because he was such a good price.
By the way, my 4 got hammered down to 5-1 from 10-1 after they left. But I think 7 is making a move on the outside.
He is making a very wide move, but he's making the 8's making a big move, the Zalamo and the 7. So they're all coming after him late here. Let's see it's gonna, who's that coming up the rail? Looks like gonna be the winner, whoever that is. I think that's number 3. That's Maltese Falcon, the horse I've been bad mouthing the whole time. So he wins it, and the 5 I think got up for second. So
Grabowski says, "Take that, Larmey."
Yeah, that's right. And Anthony, I think, might have got some money off the 5. But he's certainly not hurt by the favorite winning again. So I think he'll be pretty happy with that result, especially if the 5 got up for second. We'll have to see.
Well, I'm going to need to see a replay for that for second money.
Yeah, there's a photo, but they're doing a great job of showing us the gallop out, and they're not showing us the stretch replay. Okay. In the replay, that would be nice. Okay, let's see. It's 5-4-2 going to the wire.
It's a head bob between 2 and 5, Chris.
Yeah. Nobody had the 2 in the top 20, but a couple of the top 4 had the 5, so they'll be hoping for that placing. The photo was tight. It's hard to call that one because they weren't right next to each other.
No,
they were bobbing,
and their heads seemed to be bobbing at a very rapid rate.
Let's
weren't on rhythm.
Yeah, it looks like the 5 got his nose down. That's what it looked like.
And it is the 5.
That's
Panic Alarm.
Yeah, that's what it looked like in the live view. So that means another, bottom line, it was a good result for Anthony and a good result for Frank because Anthony's only a race away with a big lead and Frank moved himself up into second. So that's worth some money for Frank for sure. I mean, what's 80,000 for second and what for third? How much is pretty big difference, I think.
42,000 for
Right.
third.
So at 40,000,
you're looking at him getting into second, which is correct, but his other entry is going to get him up into. I don't know if he'll pass Okazaki. Okazaki will have a better place price than Grabowski's second entry, but Grabowski's going to get the $7 to win. He's definitely going to move into fifth with his bad entry and maybe into fourth.
Yeah. And so he does have some leverage. So maybe he'll take a swing in the last race because he doesn't really have anybody else to pass up besides Anthony. So,
Chris, as a public service to Frank, why don't you tell him what he should do so he can eliminate that from
yeah, so he can do the exact opposite. Well, if he wants to win, he'll need to pick a horse that's above, 8 or 10 to 1 on one of his entries. So be a little disappointed if he doesn't do that. But other than that, go with what you like because it certainly worked to this point. But if you want to win the contest, you got to give yourself a chance. Okay, so we should get an update here.
Well, looks like the standings have been updated.
Yes.
He's second and third. He got by Schnepp.
Yeah. So now, you got to take a shot. And he's in the perfect spot to take advantage of what he's got. He can play one conservatively to hold second and one to go for the win. So, clearly he needs to make one play that gives him a chance to win this thing. And that makes it really interesting because, he definitely can take a shot and Anthony's got to be worried about that. He can take two shots. I'd like to see him take two shots to win it. And then there's no way Anthony can block him. He can only block one of them. So at least I think they'll both be live to a chance to win it at the end. And, Max and the other Frank, let's see, there's several players that are within, a calf horse of catching Anthony. So, maybe they might be thinking just trying to get second, but they could take a shot as well. So, at least we'll have people live to win other than Anthony going into the last race.
And technically, I misspoke when I said Grabowski was in second and third. He's actually in a tie for third, a flat-footed tie with Max Schnepp. So it quite possibly could come down to tiebreakers to separate those two if neither cashes anything in the last race.
And maybe someone can figure out who's ahead on the tiebreaker before we go into the last race here. Is it the most third place finishes?
I can probably figure that out pretty quickly. I believe the first criterion is most winners, and the second criterion is biggest winner. Let's see who they. Oh well, it's not tallied for me. It's not tallied up, but I would have to count it up. But
we can do that during.
We go to the tiebreaker, and we will take the time to announce this just in case anybody is either of the two players are listening or their friends are listening and they can pass along this information if they're not looking it up themselves. And here we go, tiebreakers. Anyway, it's the most number of first is the most number of winners, and then second tiebreaker is the highest win payout. And if they're still tied after that, then it's the number of place horses. And then there's like a C, D, or a D, E, F, and G from there. But it's most winners, highest winner, and most place horses is what it'll, if those two remain tied after the final race. Let's take a look at the day money now, see if that shifted at all with Maltese Falcon. Nope. Well, this time Caleb Knight extended his lead thanks to having Panic Alarm and his $7 place mutual. So Caleb Knight gets a little bit of breathing room. You wouldn't say he's safe by any means, but he's increased his lead over Craig Kaufman. Keith Simon remains in third, and Frank Grabowski with entry number 2 has moved into fourth over Anthony Spinazzola, courtesy of Maltese Falcon. So there's your top 4. And again, the payoffs for the day money are, I lost my leaderboard, but 14,000 and change for first, 8,000 and change for second, and then third is 4,380 and fourth is 1,460. So, and there's the overall leader or payoff table that you saw before. But again, Knight, Kaufman, Simon, and Grabowski Jr., 1, 2, 3, 4 on the day 2 money. So that leaves us with one race. Anthony Spinazzola up by $38.40, it looks like. $38.40 is his cushion. Before we go to break, Chris, you're up $38.40, and what basically are you thinking at this point, if you're Anthony, that anything 10-1 or lower is running for me?
Yeah, I mean, you basically have a stable full of horses at 10-1 or less. So, you know, those horses are your friend. So I'd be playing the horse, you know, that's above 10-1 that I'm most concerned about. I'd be playing defensively for sure in here, because that.
And we're told that Frank has way more wins than Max Schneff, 16-8. In fact, based on that count, Max can't possibly catch Frank if they wind up in a tie. So anyway, that's the differential on the tiebreaker between Grabowski and Schneff. And as you're looking at the board, Chris, while we have the luxury of not really, you know, studying race 11 at Del Mar, as you just look at the board and breathe and take it in, where do you see people, and maybe it's impossible to guess, but where do you see people swinging for the fences, and where do you perhaps see somebody laying down a bunt single or trying to?
It all depends on what they are looking for. You know, like I said, to me, this is the kind of race where anything can happen. You know, it's a big field of maiden claimers. A lot of these horses don't look very good on paper, but this is the kind of race where those horses sometimes win. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to go for a long shot. And there's a good chance if you're like in the top 10 or 20 that you could hit a horse that nobody else has, because there's so many long prices in this race. If you look at it, I mean, I'm looking right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 horses that are huge prices. So, you know, if you want to take a swing, you could conceivably jump way up the leaderboard and not get blocked by anybody, because there's so many. It's not like there's only 1 or 2 long shots. So it's kind of a dangerous leaderboard for Anthony if the other players are aggressive. But at the same token, you know, those horses, none of them look good on paper. And you got this compressed leaderboard where, like, you know, pick anybody. Pick Caleb Knight in 11th place. You know, if he can hit a 5 or 6-1 winner, he could jump up into the top 5. And the difference in money from 11th to 5th is probably pretty significant. Same thing if you're, say, you know, Michael Goodrich in 8th place. He could hit a 6-1 shot, and he could vault himself up into, you know, 3rd place, or, you know, or an 8-1 shot. So it all depends on what they think of the race and what they're willing to settle for, and, you know, what their objective is. So, you know, it's just so individual at this point I could see almost conceivably any horse on the board, any of these players near the top. Now, you get farther down the board where you're out of the money, and they'll all be taking a shot, right? But there's a whole bunch of choices among the long shots. You've got to pick which one you're going to go with. So once you get farther down, like in 40th place or something, everybody's going to be on a big price. But it's not real obvious to me, who's going to go for what. It just depends on if there's a horse they really like and where they are on the leaderboard and how, do they really want to take a shot at a horse they don't like as much just to get a shot at the 200,000, or are they willing to, move up 6, 8, 10 spots and go from, maybe getting 80,000 or 40,000 instead. So, and there's also the day money we talked about, right? So if you add up moving up the board on the day money and moving up the board on the main board, that again could enter into the thinking.
I will point out that only the top 13 can possibly win, because the most, for those who are unfamiliar with the scoring system, the payoffs are capped at 20-1 to win and 10-1 to place, which works out to $42 to win and $22 to place. That means the most you can get on any one pick is $64, and the lowest standing player who could scale Anthony Spinazzola with $64 is Miles Richards down in 13th place. 64 would give him 308.10. 64 would not get the job done for Joe Migliori. So really we're talking about a field of 13 in terms of or 12 others that Spinazzola has to worry about. And I suppose the good news is, with a 12-horse field, there's a chance a few of those bombs are going to be uncovered.
Yeah, so you could
among those 12
right
behind him.
That's what I meant. There's so many long shots that you could make that leap from 12th to winning, or because there's a good chance. Not only because there's multiple long shots, but a lot of those players may be happy. Like they might love a horse like Bluegrass Rider. I'm not saying that anybody does, but the horse is 10-1. If you're sitting in 7th or 8th place, that 10-1 shot could vault you into second for $80,000. So they may be perfectly happy going for that 10-1 shot. So if you are being aggressive, you might be able to leap past all those people if you can catch the bomb. And certainly Anthony's hoping everybody's thinking that way. Yeah, go for that 10-1 shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You don't want to go for one of those bombs.
80,000's a lot of money,
Yeah. But the problem is kind of the obvious contenders on paper. There just isn't a lot of they're sort of like a bunch of bombs and then some obvious ones where none of them is a standout. So you're getting, 7-2 on the 3, and you're getting 9-2 on the 7, and 5-1 on the 9, and 9-5 on the 12, which is a little surprising. So, you don't really have a lot of those mid-price. It's like either 5-1 or 20-1. So, if 5-1 doesn't get you where you want to go, you can probably take a shot. If 5-1 moves you up enough to make it worthwhile, that's probably the way they'll go. So like, pick somebody like Frank Okazaki. A 5-1 shot could get him second, right? So if he loves one of those shorter price horses and he doesn't like any of the bombs, he might be happy to go for that and get the 80,000 and be perfectly fine with that. If he doesn't really like any of those 5-1 shots, or he likes one of the long shots, then he'll take a swing. So I think that's kind of the position most of those guys in the top 12 are in. Is there a long shot they think's really realistically has a chance they can win it all? If not, are they happy moving up with a 4 or 5-1 shot? Because that's kind of the options right now.
All right. Well, we're going to check with Chris in a couple of minutes to see what long shots he might see as plausible ones with a shot. For the last time tonight, we're going to take a brief break, and then we'll be back for the conclusion of the Spa Surf Showdown, Race 11 at Del Mar. We'll see you in a few. We are back, and Anthony Spinazzola of Mesa, Arizona, is hoping the next 5 or 6 minutes are uneventful, and if that is the case, it will be a highly eventful day and weekend for him, as he is the leader of the Spa and Surf Showdown. He's got a $38 edge going into this last race. Excuse me, $30. $29.80 edge. I'll get it right. My math skills are as bad as my eyes. Anyway, that's his cushion going into the last race. 5 minutes to post. A 12-horse maiden claimer. Lots and lots of big prices are out there on the board. Only the top 13 are within a cap horse of Spinazzola. So that's a point in Spinazzola's favor. Chris Larmey, how do you see this race? And if you were being aggressive, how would you approach it?
Yeah, there's some of these horses that are really hard to make a case for, but it's the kind of race where maybe they could win. But I'd say of the big prices, the horse I'm most interested in, he's not a cap horse, but he's enough to get, maybe 45, 50 points. That's the 8-horse, My Brother Mike, who's going second off a layoff. He was running in the East, and he's making a second start out in the West Coast for a new barn. And he showed some speed in his last race. That can be dangerous at this level. So you can see some improvement there. So I can make a case for him. There's a first-time starter in a weak field. That's always kind of dangerous. He's not really taking any money at all. And he doesn't come from a barn that wins very often. So it's a bit of a stretch. But, in a kind of race like this, I could see people maybe going with that one. And then I kind of mentioned Bluegrass Rider earlier. He's not impossible. He's only 10-1, but 10-1, it's a little touchy, but assuming a favorite doesn't run second, 10-1 might be enough to get Frank above Anthony, with his top entry. So after that, I think it's kind of stabbing for the long shots. The horses that are taking money are the logical ones. Among those, the favorites probably, I'm a little surprised that the 12's the favorite, that coming off the turf. But the 9 I thought would be the favorite. He was the morning line favorite. That's sort of a logical one. If you're just trying to move up the leaderboard, I think a lot of people will be on that horse. And maybe the 7 Hard Times, who has a lot of upside. That horse is 5-1. That could move people up quite a bit on the leaderboard, that aren't trying to win it. So,
yeah, I will point out that for those who like trainer stats, Andy Mathis is 11 for his last 33 with blinkers on, or first-time blinkers. So that stat is in Hard Times' favor as well.
Yeah, good observation. And the 3-horse Snap Daddy, just been gelded. He fits in here for sure. So, the 3, 7, and 9, or 3, 7, and 9. Those are the 3 I think you'll see people playing. They're just trying to move up, move up and make some more money on that leaderboard. And then of the long shots, the longer prices, I think that it'll be the 4 Bluegrass Rider, the 9 My Brother Mike, and maybe the 1st It Was a Good Day. The rest, I think they're kind of stabbing, but people might find something in those horses that they like and take a shot. But this is the time where you do stab if you need to. So, any of those could be picks.
Yeah, my stab is going to be number 10, Missing Them, who dropped down to this level last time, but the benefit of the drop down may have been dulled or negated by going too long a distance, and now he's cutting back to 7 furlongs. So that would be the 60-1 shot of my preference. But
no, I like that. He's lightly raced, 3rd off the layoff, cutting back. He's never really run a good race, but that's the kind that can win this sort of race, right? He's still lightly raced. He's probably going to run the best race of his life, cutting back, third off the layoff, and he's a huge price. So I like your pick there, and I wouldn't be surprised if others might follow your logic. And that's a good case for a 60-1 shot. Probably isn't going to win, but he could. And if you need the 60-1 shot, why not?
Yeah, he seemed like the best of the 4 50-1 and ups to me, for whatever that is worth. But
yeah, no, I like that. I wouldn't argue with that thinking at all.
I agree with you on number 4, Bluegrass Rider. I thought that horse was legit, and gets off the rail this time, which is probably a help. That horse has held firm at 10-1. And while he seems like a chronic loser, he's only 0 for 1 on the dirt. So maybe he's not a habitual loser on the dirt yet.
So it'll be interesting. The interesting ones will be to see who Anthony tries to block with and who Frank goes with his 2 entries. So, that'll be real interesting, because Frank is in a spot where he can put some pressure on him. So we'll see what he does.
It's funny. The favorite is largely a turf horse going in the gate now. Enough analysis. You've heard our opinions, but the most important opinion is mine. And they're off.
There's a lot of bumping in the inside there. A lot of the inside horses. 3 took the worst of it probably. So that probably ended his chances. But everybody else outside the inside, or the outside horses all got pretty good breaks.
And we're waiting for the board to refresh so we can see who has what.
And Frank went with the 7. He had no chance to pass.
He's
Anthony
got the 7
went with that on both horses. Yeah, and Anthony went with Bluegrass Rider. Probably thought that Frank might go with that one. But let's see, did anybody take a swing? Yeah, 8. Frank Okazaki went with the 8. That was the horse I said I would go with as a long shot. And look, he's opened up.
On Whiskey Vision.
But look at that 8 horse. He's opening up, and Frank has a shot at 22-1. Here comes the 12, the favorite. And now he's galloping along pretty good there on the outside. And the 8 starting to hit the wall. So at this point, if you're Anthony, you're probably a pretty happy camper, just crossing your fingers, hoping that this horse can just finish it out, which it looks like he's going to do. And the 3 ran a big race after getting wiped out at the start. But let's see, the 12 horse, we had Tracy Richards in 9th on that horse, who I think was the favorite at like 2-1 or 5-2. Let's see what the final price was, 3-2. So that'll be worth about, maybe $8.
Well, in any
maybe
event,
a little more.
Congratulations to Anthony Spinazzola of Mesa, Arizona. That 3-2 favorite was running for Anthony, and since that horse was not going to do him any harm whatsoever, and he is the winner of $210,263 in the 2023 Spawn Surf Showdown. Well done, Anthony. And Anthony took command kind of partway through today, and just before we went on the air, went on a real hot streak, picking Barristan the Bold, and then following it up. That horse was at 7-1, and then a 920 place collection right after that to really extend his lead. And really, Chris, he was never severely threatened, and a large part of that was just how the races unfolded with sort of predictable, formful results.
Yeah, he had a dream. He got the lead, and then it chalked out the last 4 races. I mean, he couldn't have had it go any better. He didn't have to pick a winner. He didn't have to pick a place horse. All he had to do was just watch the last 4 races, and he was going to come home on top. It didn't really matter what he did. The way the races unfolded, it was in his favor. So, but what he won it And, before those last 4 races, he had a great, 2 days and final day. So, hats off to him. He did really well. And, Frank, as much as I was like questioning some of his plays at the end, and I would still question them, especially this last play. And at the end of the day, he's going to finish second, third, and have a great weekend, right? He's going to come home with like over $100,000. So it's kind of hard to argue with that. Looking at the leaderboard, there were a few guys that did take a shot at winning. Frank Okazaki took a shot with the 8. Vic Stauffer took a shot with the 5. Michael Goodrich took a shot with the 11, and Brendan Fay took a shot with the 5. So, 4 or 5 of the players did take a shot, tried for it. Didn't work out, but at least you had a Frank Okazaki had something to cheer for a while.
He had a thrill there, until the Keys Unity went by his horse like he was standing still.
Yeah, you could kind of tell midway through the turn that the 12, as long as he finished the race, was going to win because he was just kind of galloping.
Looked like he was taking 2 strides for every one of my brother Mike's. But anyway, Snap Daddy is second. And so Jim Kazupi, Kazupi hit that horse and was in 26th place and hit that 13-1 shot that won by the length of the stretch shortly before we came on. I think that was Del Mar race 7. And here's the payoffs: $5 and $3 for the Keys Unity, $3.80 for Snap Daddy, and we'll see how that affects the finish. It looks like Kazupi will get 6th.
I don't know if he moved up. Maybe, I don't think, he must have moved up. I don't know if he moved up at all. Tracy Richards did move up a few spots with Kia's Unity up into 7th, but
yes,
I don't know if Jim, I think Jim was already 6th. Maybe he was 7th before. He might have moved up 1 spot, but the top 5, there was no change in the order. Anthony and Frank are the 2 guys that had big paydays. Now, let's look at the Tourney Triple. Where did our top guys end up on that? We had Paul Sherman and
Brendan Fay, Paul Sherman. Now, Paul Sherman was the leader in the coming in. And so now Brendan Fay was 10th.
10th. So let's see where Paul ended up. Maybe he made a big enough move to pass Paul up.
45th is Paul Sherman, Chris.
Okay. So 25 spots behind. How far behind was?
But Fay was more than 35 spots behind Sherman going in.
So Paul should be the Tourney Triple champ then, right?
Yes, and by virtue of that, he will win both an NHC seat and a BCBC seat. And this is highly unofficial because Chris and I are talking while staring at a screen and doing math in our head and scrolling up and down. So please, what we say is not legally binding, but we believe Paul Sherman. And you got to state that, Chris, with Sherman, he's an attorney.
Right.
We do believe that Sherman is the 2023 Tourney Triple Points champ and gets an NHC seat or a BCBC seat. I don't know if Sherman is double qualified already. If he isn't, then he gets an NHC seat. If he is, then I believe he gets $5,000 instead of the NHC seat.
Well, and also I think Brendan will get 2nd in the Tourney Triple, which wins something, right?
Oh yes, that's an NHC seat.
There you go
for Brendan, and I know he has at least 1 seat already, so he either has 2 or he's now double qualified. Frank Mastari was also in the running. We'll just have to wait and see how it shakes out. We don't want to pronounce somebody a winner when they may not be, even though it's fun to speculate. But also on the something we should be paying attention to is the day money standings, because there was good money at stake, and Caleb Knight, who was seemingly held on at least the whole time we were on the air, and granted there weren't a whole lot of prices, but Caleb Knight had the best score on day 2 only, that being 177.60. For that, he receives $14,602, and is so often the case, a good day 2 or a good day 1 for that matter really puts you in good position for the overall tournament. And indeed, Knight did finish 11th. So in addition to that 14,602 in day money, Knight will take home the 11th place prize of $7,885. So all told, about a $22,000 day.
That's a
for
good day.
Caleb Knight.
Yeah.
Craig Kaufman was second in the day money. So Craig will receive $8,761 for that distinction. And he not only was he right behind Caleb Knight in the day money standings, he was right behind him in the overall standings, one place behind in 12th. So in addition to the 87.61, Kaufman will get 78.85. 11th and 12th pay the same. So that'll be about 16.5 for Kaufman. Third place in the day money was worth 43.80, and that's going to Keith Simon. And Frank Grabowski, who we're going to have to get a TI 20 to figure this out, but he gets, let's see now, he gets 14.60 for finishing 4th in the day money, and he takes both the 2nd and 3rd place prize amounts. And we will remind people, if you're just tuning in, that Grabowski wins the tiebreaker for 3rd over Max Schnepp. They both finished with 264.30. However, the first tiebreaker is number of winners, and that was no contest. Grabowski had 16 and Schnepp had 8. So
and they both picked the same horse on the last race.
So not only were they tied at the end, but they were on the same horse at the end. Schnepp was probably thinking, whatever I do, I got to try to not pick Grabowski's horse.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. But
yeah,
anyway,
Grabowski, he picked it twice.
Yeah, he was so sure. And there went the Larmey theory of, you can't, if you take two different horses, not only could he not be blocked by Spinazzola, but he only gave himself one opportunity to block Okazaki, but I guess, or Schnepp rather, but I guess he wasn't thinking along those lines. And who are we to question
the guy who walks out with $130,000 for the weekend? I don't think he's going to be too unhappy about that. Clearly he's not, because he didn't even try to win it. So his best case was exactly what it ended up being going in that last race. He stayed in 2nd and 3rd, maintained his position, and walked away with 6 figures.
My back of the envelope math, Chris, is that Grabowski for 4th place in day 2 day money and his 2nd and 3rd place finishes in the overall standings will gross him $127,618. Wow. So
that's pretty good. Pretty good payday.
And Anthony Spinazzola, again, of Mesa, Arizona, the big winner with $210,263. Any final thoughts, Chris? Anything that, when you think about this tournament, will come to mind? Was it just the chalk at the end? Was it Yuki and the bombs at the end of day 1? The DQ at Del Mar at the end of? I mean, that was one of the tensest parts of the day. Is just the steward's review of the place finish at Del Mar that moved Paul Cush up and Max Schnepp down at the end of day 1. What do you remember the 2020 Spa Surf Showdown for?
Well, imagine if that had been today, and the top 2 were decided by that DQ. So that would have been something. But you know, in terms of the races we covered in the live stream, they were pretty chalky, right? Especially today. Even though they kind of looked like there was some potential to produce prices, they didn't, and that happens sometimes. And you know, Anthony Spinazzola really benefited from that. So you know, hats off to him that he positioned himself in a way that would enable him to take advantage of that, because you know, he had that big cushion, and turns out it was all he needed. He really didn't have to do anything after that, but he played it smart. I think his pick in the last race made sense because that was probably the most logical horse that might beat him, that, you know, Frank could have went with. Frank didn't go with him. Not sure exactly what Frank was trying to do in that last race, but you know, he certainly played you know, like I said before we got started this broadcast, if you got 2 entries, the way he played it, at least for the first, you know, 40 races, is the way to do it. If you have 2 entries, you know, you can create a lot of leverage late. I don't think he took advantage of that the way I would have, and it turns out it really didn't matter because no price horses came in. But you know, that doesn't always happen, and you can't always evaluate the decisions you make based on the results. It all depends on, you know, what you're trying to accomplish. So you know, but other than that, you know, to me it was a little bit chalky. Makes it a little less exciting for us without a lot of change in the leaderboard. But you know, well played by Anthony.
Our thoughts and feelings do not matter, Chris.
That's true. Very true. Very true. But you know, I'm sure that a lot of the players are going to be happy. I mean, there's a lot of money that was given out. What, 400 and something thousand? What was the total prize money?
588,806.
Oh, 588. So I mean, that's a lot of money. A lot of these players cashed, and you know, they probably learned a little bit from the experience, but probably had fun playing. And you know, I'm sure they're all looking forward to the next contest.
Well, and you know, anybody, if you played in enough tournaments, we've all been in ones where it's bombs away and you think the tournament has been decided, and you laugh at yourself 3 hours later at how wrong that assumption was when you look back and see that it got stood on its head not once but twice after the point where you thought it might have been over. But this was the converse of that, and it speaks to something you said about an hour or an hour and a half ago when we were musing about, you know, who would you rather be? Would you rather be Anthony Spinazzola in the lead or Frank Grabowski about $20 behind with 2 entries? And you know, a case could be made both ways, but your position, and it certainly played out that way tonight, is I'd rather be $20 ahead than $20 behind, and you know, almost regardless of having that second entry.
Yeah, being in the lead. Sometimes
that $20 is hard to make up.
Yeah, and being in the lead's always a big advantage in this format because, you know, they have to come get you. You can block them. You can use horses defensively that can't get you beat, especially in that last race. So yeah, I mean, it really did unfold in a perfect way for Anthony. It doesn't always happen that way. We've been on these live streams where a cap horse won the last race and flipped the leaderboard. So, you know, and people always complain about that, but you know, same token, it can chalk out the last 4 races and nobody really makes a move. And you know, both of them are part of the game, and you know, if you play it right, you can take advantage of both scenarios, and that's just the way it is. And in this contest format, you got to think about, you know, where you're at and play it the right way. And sometimes it's your day, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, and really, when you do well, whether it's a live, well, especially in a live format, mythical tournament like this, Chris, at the end of the day, at the end of the tournament, you may have played brilliantly, and essentially all you've done is buy yourself or win yourself leverage in that last race. Right,
and you got to make this. You know, you make a choice, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. You know, Frank Okazaki took a shot at it, and for 4 furlongs, it looked like he might have been a genius. The horse didn't win, but does that mean he made a bad play? No, I think, he took a shot at winning, and it didn't work out this time, but those kinds of horses do win sometimes, and that could have been a $200,000 pick. So, you can't always judge by the results. You have to think about the process, and, in this case, everything worked out. It was Anthony. We talked about, you don't have to have a perfect day, but it's got to be one of those days where things go your way. In this case, Anthony had the lead, and it chalked out at the end, and that's it. Set it up for him, and congratulations. He played it the right way, and he goes home the winner. But he didn't have a perfect weekend, but he had a really good one. And at the end, when it really counted, things went his way, and that's what it takes to win these things.
And he hit the prices that he needed to hit.
Yeah, right.
And he missed the ones that weren't important to hit, at least in the last race. And those horses were effectively running for him, given how well he had done leading up to those last few races. Well, Chris, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure sharing the computer screen with you these last 2 days. Look forward to the next time, and thanks so much for all your generous contributions to this webcast this weekend and in all the previous ones in these HorseTourneys Tourney Triple Series that you and Bill Downs have done such a great job of covering this year. Yeah,
I really enjoy it. Don't forget, Scott Carson and I did a few of these early on before Scott
I was confining my comments to 2023. Right. But by all means, if we go back farther, yes, indeed, Scott Carson deserves his kudos as well.
Well, but kudos to you. You did great. You filled in seamlessly for Bill. Don't tell Bill I said that, but although he said he was going to try to watch some of it tonight. We'll see if we'll find out from Bill. But it was fun, and as usual, Matt and Ryan, made it really easy for us. And the HorseTourneys, I want to just tell them just the opportunity to do the live streams. Great. I think it's a great way to help grow the sport. But these contests are great for players. I mean, chance to win over $500,000 in prize money. Just from your living room on a weekend. That's something we didn't have as horse players 20 years ago. So, kudos to everybody involved and all the players that participate. You're the ones that make this happen. Without you, there wouldn't be any prize money at all. So everybody deserves a round of applause. And like you said, it's been fun.
Well, I think your last point was perhaps the most salient, Chris. Without the participation of the players, none of the rest of this stuff matters. So thanks to everybody who played, or even those who simply tried to qualify in a qualifier or a feeder for the Spa Surf Showdown. The end result was a prize pool of $588,806, $210,000. $623 of which went to Anthony Spinazzola of Mesa, Arizona, and we congratulate Anthony one last time. We also thank one last time our director Ryan Bauer and our producer Matt Kalish. It's been a pleasure. This is Eric Wing saying so long, and thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with you on the next HorseTourneys webcast sometime in late 2023 or early 2024. Thanks so much for watching.